inspiring you to set the marketplace ablaze in partnership with an awesome and limitless God. This is the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast, and this isn't business as usual. Here's your host and Chief Fire Igniter, Shae Bynes.
Welcome back to the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. This is your host, Shae Bynes, and our goal here is to inspire you to operate your business completely yielded and in partnership with our awesome and limitless God. My guest today is my husband, Phil Bynes, and our CEO of Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur. How's it going, Phil?
I'm well, my love.
Well, we are at the end of 2021, and it really feels like this year flew by. At least for me, it feels like it flew by. But here we are at the end of the year, getting ready to bring in 2022. And so I thought that you and I could have a chat about just kind of some reflections over this year, as well as what we are looking forward to, in the movement for 2022, and just kind of see where we go. How's that?
That works for me.
All right, cool. So let's start with 2021. What are some of the highlights from your perspective? What kind of stands out about this year, whether it be for you personally and your growth in this role, or the movement as a whole, the team? Like, what are some standout things for you for this year?
The standout for me for this year was how God, he spoke pretty early on through Dr. Tony about my role in this position being kind of a connect the dots role. Right. And so I really saw that throughout this year. Like, even when it came to like the type of material that I would write about in rapid fires and communicate to the community, it was all like, whatever he wanted to speak to me about in that moment, I would start writing about it. And then by the time I was done, I would see how these were overarching conversations that were connecting to take us on a journey to a very specific place. And so I'm excited that he used me like that. It was pretty cool.
That's fun. And for those who don't know, he referenced Dr. Tony Robinson. She is the prophetic strategist for Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur, and she's awesome. That's good. Give me one other highlight that stands out.
The other highlight is how, he's positioning all the different people in the movement to, what's the word I'm looking for, to launch forward in the things that God is really calling them to do, right? So he showed me how to connect the dots for this organization, right? And then he began to speak to me about the organism as a whole. That is the connection of all the people that are in Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur and how we integrate with each other, right? And so now he's starting to show me like how these different people in the things that they're doing, although it doesn't seem like it's important for the organization of Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur, how what they're doing is a catalyst for other people to walk in the fullness of being a Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur. Like, so their fellow brothers and sisters that are part of the movement, right? What they're doing is unlocking stuff in other people, what other people are supposed to do. And so I'm really excited about seeing those connections as well.
You have an example that kind of stands out to you that demonstrates what you're saying? An example.
Well, I'm going to do the easy one that always stands out because it was one of the first, right? Okay. So Latara, our director of culture, as she has been growing in the things that God has been speaking to her about, her Color Your Soul movement. And then God shifted her into what is it called now? What she's
doing Soul of a Coach now.
Soul of a Coach, right?
Yeah.
All these things that seem like it is not connected to what we do in Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur, but is exactly what's needed for some of the people that are in Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur. Like, because our assignment is not to turn around and work on people's soul care, right? We do have that responsibility. We want to see people grow in their soul care, but it's not our charge. It's not what God charges with. But because she is walking in the fullness of what God has put before her, like, we can tap her on the shoulder and be like, oh, that's awesome. How can we use some of this in what we're doing here? And, now she still does what she does in the way that she does it. But then there's ways that what she does can be integrated
Yeah.
And we didn't have to recreate the wheel, right? Same with Tasha Glover. There are some things that she does, right, that has been integrated, right?
Yeah.
And and more of that stuff is happening. During the year when we did our first masterclass. What came out of that is during that masterclass, what's her name? Pat?
Yes.
Pat Symes? Pat Symes. Something organic flew from, came out of that. Now we have
Kingdom-driven startup.
Yeah. Now we have a kingdom-driven startup. And it wasn't something that we as kingdom-driven entrepreneur, the organization, came up with. It was something that we saw it was a need, and we saw someone that was connected to the movement that was doing something that fulfills that need or is doing something similar. And we tapped them on the shoulder. Hey, can you help us out? Do you do this type of thing with people that are beginning? And sure enough, something new was produced out of something that was not even on the radar.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super good. It has been really cool to see how that comes together. I was just having a conversation with, I can't remember what podcast I was on the other day, but we were having a conversation about this whole thing around knowing what your mission and what your focus is and how it's important to know so that you can stay in alignment with that, because otherwise it's really easy to it's easy to grind, right? It's easy to start doing too many things. And it's interesting if you think about just how we've grown over the years. In the very beginning of Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur, 2012, 2013, 2014, et cetera, it was interesting because there was opportunities galore to focus on things that weren't our core, right? Mm-hmm. There was even things that could have been highly profitable for us to do in those early years that would have helped us grow fast or generate higher income faster and all of those things, right? Mm-hmm. But we would have been out of pocket. Like we would have been out of alignment with what God had us to do and how we were to show up in the marketplace. And what I find interesting about what's happened over the years is that it's just been such an intentional thing in terms of how we've developed over the years in terms of the ways that we serve. And so now in 2021, there's things that we are doing that that if we did them 6 years ago, would have been completely out of line for what we were supposed to be doing. But yet now it is in alignment, and we don't have to do it. And we don't have to do it just with the people who were the core team members. We're able to do it in collaboration with other people. Right. And so the expansion has allowed us, collaboration has allowed us to stay true to the core of what we're supposed to be doing. And for other areas that are important that God's put on our heart to serve in the community, be able to serve in those ways in partnership with other people. And I think that that's really exciting. And he's also expanded, we're doing Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Advisory Services. That would have been out of line 7 years ago, 6 years ago, even 3 years ago. Right. Yeah. But yet it's the time for this. And we're doing that in collaboration with certified service providers, right? Which was developed back in 2019. So I just love the way we've been able to really do this thing by his grace, at the pace of his grace, stay in alignment with our assignment, and then allow that assignment to be able to reach further and wider and deeper based off of collaboration.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, it's really the ways of the kingdom, though. Right. Like the way of the world is, okay, when you see that there's something that's needed in the world and there's money to be made, add it to your services. Right. And so everything becomes about gobbling up as much as you can.
Yes.
When the kingdom is not like that, like God really this year, he's really spoken to me about the whole ideal of the organism. Right. And, I've talked about this a couple of times now to the general population of Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur. But really, it's all about how God wants to grow his body organically. He multiplies every cell. Right. And the cell doesn't have to go and cannibalize other cells. He's multiplying cells, and it's like he's multiplying himself, and because we're in unity with Christ, we're in unity with each other. Yeah. Right. But a lot of times what we begin to think is, we need to have unison, right? We need to be unified. And so we want to do everything under an umbrella. And that's what organizations look to do. But God has spoken to me about, this is not an organization. This is not business as usual, which means that this is an organism.
Right.
We grow like how organisms grow, and that doesn't mean that everything has to be housed within Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur. If we're a seed movement and we're dropping seeds in people's hearts all over the place, they're carrying the movement wherever they go, and they're growing new trees, new plants, right? But it's still of the same kind, and it's still connected. If their heart is connected with the movement, or their heart is connected with Christ, and our heart remains connected to Christ, then we're always connected.
Yeah.
Even if they're doing something that looks similar to what we're doing.
Yeah.
It is no competition, because we're at the same time, right?
Yeah.
We're, although they may not be singing the same note, we're in harmony, right? And so that's been the exciting thing about what God has done this year, because he's been lining that stuff up to prepare us for what he wants to do from next year and beyond.
Yeah.
Right. Because I really sense acceleration, but we'll get into that in a moment.
Yeah. I think that with each year, we grow more and more around this topic of collaboration and what that practically looks like. And the fact that it's not always some kind of formal collaboration, but how that there's so many ways that we just informally are on one accord, working, in harmony with one another, And I think we grow in more and more with that each year. I was telling you yesterday that as I was, praying this week, that I sensed that you and I had a book to write on this topic, like a guide, just like a basic, like, let's start shifting some mindsets around this topic of kingdom collaboration, not a huge, long, exhaustive book, just like a guide that starts to get, minds shifted, heart shifted, getting people connected to what the Holy Spirit has to share with them concerning what this looks like in their own business. And so we'll have to see if that ends up being I think it's going to be a 2022 thing that we do. I think so.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that. Yeah. And so for the future, what God is showing me is like continuation of getting people's hearts and minds focused on what real stewardship looks like. Mm-hmm. Right. So real stewardship doesn't look like we take possession of stuff and it becomes our own and we're managing it from the standpoint of it's our own. Right. Real stewardship looks like us understanding that whatever comes into our possession, we don't take ownership of. We only have possession because the Lord has given us possession for this moment. And thus we're able to release or redirect or, repurpose whatever the resource is that comes into our possession.
Yeah.
And so the next phase of that for me, what I'm looking forward to in the next season is now God is starting to talk to me about this ideal of pillar, right? And so what is a pillar? A pillar is, people that are positioned close to you and they're designed to help you do the things that you're supposed to be doing, right? Although they're not in charge, but they're supposed to help you. So what does that look like? Let's talk about a spouse. You're an entrepreneur. You have a business, but you keep your spouse out of your business because they're not entrepreneur. They have a full-time job or whatever. What the heart of a pillar is that they're coming alongside you to support you, even if they're not a part of what you're doing. I mean, if you look at our example, as Shae Bynes has been doing a Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur, I've always been a pillar. I didn't have an official capacity, but my finances, what I was bringing in the house helped her continue to do the job that God had her to do in Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur. So in some ways, I was a pillar through finances. At others, I was a pillar through being a sounding board. I was a pillar in praying over her. So the growth of Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur, although I wasn't directly involved in the organization, I was involved in the organism of what was going on with it. Right. Yeah. And so for some people, when they look at now me being in the role of CEO, it seems random. But if we look at things the way that God looks at things, I've always been a part of this movement. Right. I've always been supporting. Right. And because I've sown into this movement, God has said, okay, now it's time for you to harvest, right? And my harvest is coming in and being the father of the movement, right? And so it's that type of thing that God is speaking to me about, helping people to begin to see this whole ideal of being a pillar in whatever capacity. It doesn't have to be husband and wife. It could be sisters, brothers, whatever the case is, right? Friends, but God wants to show us, unravel what it looks like to be a pillar to the people that are around us. And sometimes it's not even people in your household. You're not family. They're your neighbors. How can I be of support? What do you need? Can I watch your child for you? Whatever it looks like, God he's the source, and he will show you whatever is best for your relationships. And that too is collaboration.
That's exactly what I was about to say.
Yeah. So I think that's next level of what God wants to continue to show people. Look, let me unravel what collaboration really looks like, and take you outside of the box that you're living yourself. You limit yourself to.
Yeah, that's so good. What was the biggest challenge for you or for KDE from your perspective this year? Biggest stretch, biggest challenge?
I would say the biggest challenge for me was to stop trying to be equal parts owner, operator of Crazy Good Massage, and CEO of Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur. What God had to show me was I needed to shrink Crazy Good Massage, not because it was going away, but so that I could make the mother of this movement comfortable by really taking care of her baby. It's like if you are a parent, especially if you're a father, you probably had an experience where when mommy needs to leave the house and she knows that you're kind of loose with the kids, she gets a little bit nervous if she's going to be gone for a period of time because, oh my goodness, you're going to feed my kids, right? Oh yeah, I'm home. Okay, go ahead. Go on.
They're going to go to bed before 1 a.m., right?
Go to bed before 1 a.m. Why are you worrying about it? Go. But at the same time, when the child when she's just getting used to leaving the house, she needs to feel supported. She needs to feel some level of comfort, right? And so that was the hardest part, was getting to the understanding of, Phil, you have to take care of this baby that is Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur better than how you take care of your own little business right now, so that Shae Bynes could really let go of her baby and know that the baby's okay.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Yeah, that's good. So this whole year has been really interesting for me personally in terms of walking out transition, and what that looks like, how it's supposed to look, finding that rhythm. I had shared with a few folks recently how it really did take a full year. It took a full year to feel like, okay, I think this is what this transition is supposed to look like. And that took some time. And there was tension in that here and there, whatever, because I'm trying to find my place, find my rhythm, never an issue of trust, right? But an issue of just wanting to steward on myself. What does this look like for me, to be an advisor, an overseer of what's going on at Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur, and also simultaneously have an ear to hear and move towards the things that are outside of, they're ancillary to Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur that he'd have me do. Right. And then also, when I realized, okay, so I'm going to be a lead advisor for our new advisory services, pretty much like a new kind of another division of what we're doing. It was like, okay, cool. That's kind of operational in nature. That's not really advising and oversight. It's really being in startup mode on one thing. Right. So it's like, okay, well, how do I do these things the right way? Right. How do I not be in the way, but be exactly where I need to be supportive, not prescriptive, to be like all of these things. Right. And so that has been the biggest challenge for me this year. And it hasn't been a bad thing. It's just been a thing. It's just the thing to kind of walk through. And I've had conversations with people who have had similar, transitions, whether they transition out of CEO to like executive chairman, or whether they were formerly they're a founder and then they hired a CEO, or, whatever. There's been a few different kind of dynamics of, conversations I've had with people, but in all of them, they were just like, give yourself some grace. Like, transition really does take time. Like, it does. You're not behind the 8 ball. You're walking through the process. And because all of these things are important to you and you want to do this thing in a way that is in alignment with God, it makes sense that you would take the time to really walk through it, and not feel any kind of way about it. Right. So I think that was personally for me the biggest challenge and stretch of this year, but I feel really good about where I've landed. Here we are in, December 2021. I feel really good about where I've landed. And how to move forward next year.
Yeah, it's good because like part of it is learning what your role as chief fire igniter looks like.
Yeah.
Right. Because up until this point, it was always kind of CEO-ish because there was no one else to fall into that position. Right.
Right.
But it's so much bigger than what it's been to this point. Right. And so I understand. Yeah. Part of your desire is not to feel like you're micromanaging or putting your nose in places where it shouldn't be. Right. But the truth is, part of your role is as apostolic, you are still a builder. Right. And there's some things that God's still speaking to you, that there is some building that's still left to be done. Right. And so the balance of finding out, okay, when do I jump in? When do I step out?
Yes.
Right. And it all comes with like setting up some frameworks. Right. And so I thought it was very cool that we just did our executive team retreat, mini retreat meeting, right? As we were talking about the things to come in the next year. Yeah. And I was glad that you said, oh, can I do this? Like, you wanted to come and you wanted to facilitate the meeting, right? And you're operating in your strength in doing so, which is definitely not my strength, right? And I'm like, sure, because you're not stepping on my toes. I've been with you long enough to know, like, you can push for certain things, but if I feel like I'm not supposed to do those things, I'm not gonna let you push me into something that I don't want to do. I'm gonna push back, and it might make you upset or whatever. So I am comfortable. I'm comfortable in our dynamics, and I don't feel any kind of way when you have your input or, and that's how it should be. Like, we're family, right? We are one, me and you, right?
Right.
You're just, and so it's cool,
Yeah.
I want you involved, right? I want you at the level, whatever God is speaking, I want that, right?
Yeah, that's super good. And it was a really great, by the way, meeting to have with the KDE exec team. And I'm really excited about our path forward. It's always going from one level of glory to the next, right? Year after year after year. And I'm really excited to see how things just continue to build upon, in 2022, and our ability to continue to grow in collaboration, to continue to begin to really advise people in a really powerful way, with the new aspects of what we're doing and how we're growing the things that we've been doing, all of those things, growing in our team, so that we have people that are in place to do the things that need to get done, that then releases other people to fully walk in, their particular role. So there's some stretching that we have to do, some stretching and growth. We're at I can't remember the phrase. There's this phrase for it. I can't, it's escaping me right now, but we're at this like pivotal phase where it's like, there's things connected to our ability to really move forward in the things that God has for us. But it takes some really kind of strategic and faith-filled decision-making that we have to do in order to create that atmosphere for God to just do exactly what he has shown us. Right. And so, but we have to like partner with him in a way that, again, starts to feel a little bit stretchy and uncomfortable in order to see that breakthrough. right? And so I feel like we're at that stage again. And many companies go through those phases where it's like, oh, okay, now, so we have some decisions to make. And either we're going to be stagnated or we're going to make some very important strategic and faith-filled decisions so we could continue to progress, or eventually, or you won't make those decisions. And eventually we begin to move in the opposite direction, right? It's like, it's a lot of companies go through those phases, right? And so I think we're at a really exciting phase. But again, one that is going to require us again to stretch in faith and just walk this thing out with him. And I'm excited about that. It's all good. Yeah. Grace over grind for Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur.
I'm with you. And to go back to this ideal of growing the team, right? I'm excited about, the new positions that we'll be filling in this new year, right? Yeah. And I know it's going to come from people that are connected to the movement. Some positions are going to have to be filled by igniters because they're really going to have the heart of the movement to really flow in those positions. But there'll be some positions opening up that people that are part of Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur, and they might not be in the innermost circle of igniters, but they'll have something to supply in the movement. I'm excited about all that stuff, Yeah. I'm pretty sure we'll be looking for virtual assistants soon to help with stuff, Yeah, man, marketing people, all kind of stuff, man. Sales, all those things, man, it's coming in this new year, but it really has to be with people that can connect to the heart of what we're doing, because it's not business as usual. Yeah. And so
it's not business as usual.
They're going to have to be able to flow with the spirit.
We're structured and we flow. We got the dynamics of both. Yeah, super good. I love it. So is there any kind of closing thoughts, anything that you wanted to make sure to kind of share with the peeps in this closing episode of 2021?
What I think I would like to say to the people as you're listening to this podcast episode, we want to hear the different ways that, this movement has touched your life, right? Because it helps to encourage us to keep moving forward. And it helps us to see, some of the moves and some of the connections that God is doing in this season, right? So you can do that at, what is it? Info at kingdomdrivenentrepreneur.com.
Yeah, you can email info@kingdomdrivenentrepreneur.com. And that'll
share with us your testimonies, share with us the things that you've gotten the most out of this over this past year, whatever you feel led to share. And that'll be cool. We would love to see what's going on, how you're connected. Because it's always surprising when, we run into someone and they're connected and we don't know that they've been connected this whole time.
Yeah, that's always fun.
We don't get to see the fullness of our family, right? But if you're connected in heart to this movement, you are, Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur. You carry Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur wherever you go, right? Yeah. But that doesn't mean that we always see you and we don't always know how you're connected. So it'd be cool to be able to see some of the connection points. And so
here's some testimonies.
I invite you to share testimonies, thoughts, and all the rest of that stuff.
Yeah, good stuff. Very good. All right. So again, you can do that at info@kingdomdrivenentrepreneur.com. Also, coming up in January, the week of January 17th, we're going to be doing another live masterclass events like we did in April of this year. And so that's going to be fun. We're going to have, that week of January 17th. If you go to kdemasterclass.com, then you can go ahead and register for that event. That is a free live event that we'll be doing, and it's going to be fun. So you can go to KDE. Ooh. What?
Go ahead and finish, and I'll tell you about
KDE, as in Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur. KDEmasterclass.com to get registered. What we're going to say?
Yeah, I want to give you guys a challenge. If you're listening to this podcast and you love everything that we do at Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur, I want to challenge you guys to invite people to this live masterclass. Just invite, if we'll have, shareable things and stuff like that. Maybe we'll have a special day where everybody, like, we just flood the Facebook, news feed, right? With stuff about this event. But no, I just challenge you, just share it with a few people, and because we want to see our community grow, right? And we want to, really impact the world with the kingdom of God, right? We know that we're not the only people that are doing that. We're not the only kingdom people that are in our assignments, but we want to help people be able to see us if we're part of their assignment, right? And if they're a part of our assignment. So that's it.
Okay, very good. Well, you heard Mr. Bynes, so we'd appreciate.
Hold on. Let me change it because you just said Mr. Bynes, and it reminded me that Tony calls me King Bynes. So I'm saying that this is a king's decree. All the subjects of the court of Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur, the king's decree is to talk about this this masterclass that's coming up.
I better end this episode because the more we go, the more silly King Phil, Mr. Bynes is going to get. So this is super good. You all have a happy new year. We're really looking forward to just continuing to share this message, to continue to really inspire through this podcast, have really great conversations with entrepreneurs all over the globe who are doing business in partnership with God, and just continue to, encourage, provoke, and help us all to move forward for the glory of God with Him. All right, you all. Happy New Year. Take care. God bless.
Thanks for joining us on the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, we encourage you to subscribe and spread the word. And don't forget, you can gain access to even more resources, plus a thriving community of fire starters by visiting our website at kingdomdrivenentrepreneur.com.